Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Daily Fix. I am your usual host and presenter, Advocate Tulo Hoyani. A day or two ago, I painted a scenario for you. And let me just reiterate one or two things about that scenario and get to the scenario itself. In that analysis, because the Daily Fix is not just about news, I've always said, it's about news and news analysis. You see, its most important component is the news analysis aspect of it. And I do that news analysis as an advocate, not just as any other person coming off the street to tell you what the law is or what the law is not. I do so as an advocate with 30 plus years of experience. So it is that rider that I want to begin this morning, just to assure you that what I give you by way of news analysis is not just speculation. So this morning, let us look at the fallout between Gininda and Kelly Khumalo. You see, Gininda and Kelly Khumalo have been fighting out of the same corner, so to speak. But in my own analysis, I think it was fatal for the prosecution not to have called Kelly Khumalo as a witness. Because I've always maintained that Kelly Khumalo was the closest person to Senzo in that house on that fateful day. But be that as it may, the prosecution never called her as a witness. So the result of that is, if the prosecution did not call her as a witness, the defense then is free to call her as a witness. You will recall also that Gininda pointed out to the court that Kelly Khumalo is the mastermind. And immediately after that, Kelly Khumalo was furious and even dared Gininda to arrest her. Now, I said in that analysis, and I'm saying it again today, that Kelly Khumalo can be a star witness for the defense. And how does that happen? Legally speaking, there is something called a subpoena. Ordinarily, witnesses will appear before court and be called by either the prosecution or the defense. They don't have to be compelled to come before court. But by way of a process or a document called a subpoena, they can be compelled, and I want to emphasize that, they can be compelled to appear before court even though they are not willing to do so. In the case of Kelly Khumalo, the only way she can appear before that court is through a subpoena by the defense to compel her to come forward, because this will boost the defense case. And having come forward, all that the defense has to do is not even a difficult task. They just have to confront her with the evidence of Gininda, to say to Kelly Khumalo, Gininda has testified before this court that in fact you are the mastermind in the killing of your boyfriend, Senzo Meyiwa. We have always thought that you were a victim because, among other things, there was evidence was put before the court that A cell phone was robbed from you during that incident which culminated in the death of Senzo Meyiwa. But Gininda has told us something else. Gininda has told us that you are in fact not a victim, but a perpetrator. And not only a perpetrator, but the perpetrator in chief, the person who orchestrated it all, paid these people, planned it, and all the rest of it. That is what the defense will put before Kelly Khumalo by way of a question subsequent to our appearance in the Pretoria High Court after she has been subpoenaed or compelled to do so, because she is not going to be a willing witness. She cannot be called by the defense other than through a subpoena to come before that court. And I've always in my analysis said there is no way that she's going to admit that she's the mastermind behind the killing of Senzo Meyiwa, as Gininda has testified. So when that question is put to her, the only available answer to her, or the only escape route for her, is to say, I am not the mastermind in the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. I never contracted anybody. Because Gininda said this was a contract killing. She will say, and I can assure you she will say that. She will say, I had never contracted anybody to kill my boyfriend Senzo Meyiwa. And Gininda is therefore lying or lied to the court when he told this honorable court that I am the mastermind behind the killing of Senzo Meyiwa. What then is the net effect or net impact of that in law? The net impact of that in law is that this will completely discredit rather, the defense version put by the lead investigator that there is a mastermind in the form of Kelly Khumalo in this trial. Now, when that becomes apparent, it pokes holes in the prosecution case, because the prosecution will be seen to be dishonest and untruthful to that court. Because you will recall that at the beginning, they said Kelly Khumalo was a victim, was one of the victims, including the other people in the house. Now, all of a sudden, Gininda surprised everybody, including Baloyi, to say that Kelly was a mastermind. So when she comes before that court and actually denies that she's the mastermind, that will contradict what Gininda has said. And contradictions in law, if witnesses for the same side, in this case the prosecution, contradict each other, put versions before the court which are, in conflict with each other, it then discredits the prosecution case. That is the scenario that I painted for you, and that I am still painting for you this morning. And I hope the defense counsels in the Meyiwa trial will take up this issue, because it will be a very important issue to traverse. Because as it is, they don't have much to go on by way of discrediting the version of 636. Now, having discredited the version of 636 that there were intruders into that house, they will then make a follow-up to that by calling Warrant Officer Makubu. Warrant Officer Makubu, as we all know, is the investigator who opened docket 375 in 2019. Makubu will just simply say, he'll have nothing to do with Gininda and Kelly as such. But all that Makubu will say, I opened a second docket because there were differences between us as investigators. There were those who testified that there were those who took the view that there were intruders into that house. I, Makubu, did not believe that because the evidence did not disclose that there had been any intruders who had entered that house, and that the people in the house have got something to do with the death of Senzo Meyiwa. So that version by Makubu, with the prosecution case being discredited by the contradictions between the testimonies, the earlier testimony of Gininda and the present or current testimony of Kelly Khumalo to say, I am not the mastermind, together with the evidence of Warrant Officer Makubu, who says, I did not believe that there were intruders into that house, will bolster the defense case. And then the judge will only be left with making a determination to say, here is the prosecution contradicting itself, discrediting itself, right? Losing credibility before my eyes, because the impact of that is also that, you know, the prosecution case will lack any credibility. Now the judge will have to take that and say to himself, okay, on the other hand, now I have Warrant Officer Makubu. And you see how advantageous that will be for the defense case. So that is the analysis that I was giving you. It is an unusual situation, and as I've said, and I'm saying this morning again, that unusual circumstances, the unusual circumstances that we see in the Senzo Meyiwa trial, this is a unique trial. We have never seen a trial in South Africa where there are two dockets opened in respect of the same murder investigation by two sets of police officers operating out of the same Vosloorus police station. So the scenario that I'm portraying to you is unusual. But unusual scenarios, unusual circumstances call for extraordinary solutions. And this is an extraordinary solution, an unusual solution, but a possible solution. A possible solution. And I think the defense will have to do something and pursue that line of thought. You know, I recall the likes of the late advocate Thulani Mgomezulu. Mgo will have taken up this. The bulldog will have taken up this. So this morning, just ponder that, and I hope for those who wanted some clarification about how this issue of Kelly Khumalo appearing before the court is going to be dealt with. It is going to be dealt with by way of that subpoena which I've explained. Having said that, thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you very much for the views that I'm seeing and all the subscriptions that I'm seeing. Please like, share, and don't skip those videos. Don't skip those adverts rather. And thank you very much and have a blessed day.